Thank you all for having me virtually. I guess I'll just kind of let's see if I can get this to go. There we go. A little bit about me. I was born and raised here in Central Missouri. I have 4 sisters, and we all were fed by our mother's backyard garden. So kind of agriculture and healthy eating has been a part of my life from day one. I did graduate from the University of Missouri here in Columbia, and most of my history was in restaurants, restaurant management before I started this job. I moved to New Orleans for 4 years, and that's where I really started to develop my passion for local food. I started shopping at the Crescent City Farmers Market then, and really began developing relationships with local farmers. While I was down there, I also managed a monthly artisans market, and between that and my restaurant management, it's kind of what allowed me to get my foot in the door for this position. I met my husband down in New Orleans, who happened to also be from Missouri, though. So we decided to move back to Missouri in 2011, and in 2013, I was hired with this position. And so March 1st, I celebrated my 10-year anniversary with the market. A little bit about the market. So we're getting ready to go into our 43rd season. So we were established in 1980. That's one thing that I was very fortunate when I came into this position, is that it was already a well-established market. But we still have seen just absolute insane growth over the last 10 years. For those of you that aren't familiar with Columbia, we're smack dab in the middle of the state, halfway between St. Louis and Kansas City on Interstate 70. We're also about smack dab center in the entire country. Columbia has 3 different colleges, universities here, so the University of Missouri, and then 2 smaller private colleges. And we've got around 130,000 people that live here. That number goes up quite a bit during the school year when students are in session. Some of the things that we're proud of, or that we feel makes us a little unique, is kind of our history, but also that we are a producer-only farmers market. We take that very seriously. We inspect all of our vendors before they can sell at the market, and then we regularly visit them every Saturday or every couple of years. We also have a 50-mile radius that everybody has to produce within. And then we are a 501c4 nonprofit. We're actually in the process right now of applying to become a 501c3. And then we are a member-owned and managed farmers market. So we are, it's a membership organization. All the vendors pay a membership fee, and then they ultimately make up the 7 board members who are more or less my bosses. So the last 2 years have been really exciting for us. I'm going to go to this slide first. So back in 2021, through American Farmland Trust, we were selected or won the #1 farmers market in the nation award that they do. It's a voting contest. So a lot of people have asked me over the last couple of years, what does it really mean? And to me, I mean, it is a popularity contest. Like, how many people can you get to vote? And so I like to tell people that we have some of the best customers around, because they're the ones that support us and have been supporting us for 43 years, and they're the ones who voted for us. Last year, we got the #2 spot, and we've maintained the #1 farmers market in Missouri award for the last 2 years now. So I'm going to kind of go through our history, are the agriculture park and kind of what that is, a little bit of where we are today, how we got there, and then some of the like tools for success that I've used over the years. And as I kind of mentioned this earlier, this presentation is slightly geared towards market managers, but I think a lot of it will be useful for what you guys are hoping to do up there. So where the market is currently located has been, for the majority of our history, our home. Back in 1980, it was actually our county fairgrounds, and we had a pavilion over our head, and it's a 20-acre site. In the 90s, though, the fairgrounds relocated and all the buildings were demolished. So at that point, we were like, wait, we need a roof over our head again. We actually started with one and then we lost it. So it was at that point where we and supporters really started to try and envision a permanent location, a home, a building. Fortunately, the city of Columbia did purchase that land and it became a city park, and they've allowed us to remain on site. But we've spent the last 20, 30 years working to build a permanent structure. So these are some photos from back in the 80s and 90s. So this is kind of what the pavilion looked like before. I don't know if you can kind of tell, like this lady right here is like peering in. Apparently they used to rope off the whole pavilion and people couldn't go in until they rang the bell. So they're like, who's got the best tomatoes? And people are lining up there. This is what we looked like for most of our history. Was the pop-up tents in 2 straight lines, and I think back then this was probably a 20-foot walkway. So this is kind of an aerial shot. So we did kind of like move to different locations within the park, but this is what we looked like for most of our history. We do currently have a pavilion, and I'm going to show some photos of that, but during the time that it was constructed, we did have to move. So we relocated to a different part of town for about 1.5 years, into a parking lot of a shopping center. So this is the setup we had there. So this, for the most part, is what we look like now. This photo is a little older, but up here in the top, this is our pavilion. This is the center third. So this like concrete pad to the left and to the right of the pavilion is actually where the entire space will be. We're in the process, actually just started today, construction started today to finish that pavilion. And we intentionally built it in phases, just knowing that there's no way we would have raised the amount of money for it. But we have a number of partners at the park. There's us, there's the Columbia Center for Urban Agriculture, Sustainable Farms and Communities, and Columbia Parks and Recreation. So it's this public-private partnership. The Columbia Center for Urban Agriculture, who I'll refer to as CCUA going forward, is the other main tenant of the site. They've been around for about 13 years. And they basically, what they do is they grow food in an urban setting, and they use that farm as a educational teaching site. So they have a very strong volunteer program, and they work very closely with the public school system. So people are coming to the farm, learning how to grow food, learning how to eat healthy, and then all of the food that they grow, they donate to local food pantries. So this urban farm here down in the middle of the photo is theirs. They manage that. And then on the left-hand side is their barn. There's now a greenhouse on the front of that as well. And then right in the middle, this little tiny building is the one-room schoolhouse, which they use when they have field trips, and kind of it's a classroom. And then they do free kids activities on Saturdays, and those take place in that little schoolhouse too. So the pavilion is a year-round pavilion. We are open all year. It has drop-down vinyl walls to where we just kind of zip that pavilion up during the winter. And we moved into that space in July of 2019. There's another building that we have not that we're fundraising for now, and it'll be a welcome center with a commercial kitchen and an event space. But to date, we have raised over $7.7 million to this, and over 64% of that has come from private sources, so from individuals and local businesses. So when I was saying, that really we do have the best customers, like I wholeheartedly believe that, because they're the ones that have supported our organizations in this capital campaign. So this is another shot, a little more updated than that other drone shot. So this is what the market looks like right now during the summer. So they're still outside, there's the pop-up tents, and then about a third of our vendors are under the roof. This is what that event space welcome center will look like when it's constructed. And so we're a couple $1 million away from from this site. But we really wanted to kind of focus on finishing the pavilion and then step into the next kind of phase of our capital campaign. So our market today, as I mentioned, does open year round. Our summer season is April through October, and our winter season is November through March. We're also open Wednesdays, late afternoon, early evenings, kind of during the peak growing season. We've been open every day of the week over the years, and they've all struggled. Just kind of it's been a challenge to get customers there, kind of this chicken and egg thing. Can't get enough vendors, so we can't get enough customers, and vice versa. But last year we partnered with Parks and Rec, and they do a food truck roundup. So that kind of partnership and extending the market a little later into the evening we saw really great success. So I am excited to kind of see how that continues to grow. We also, let's see, so our summer market, we have around 80 members. Our pavilion has 98 stalls, but a number of them have double stalls. We're averaging around 5,000 customers per Saturday during the summer, and around 2,500 during the winter. And we have around 50 vendors or so that sell during the winter season. We offer a lot of different programming. So we do SNAP, WIC, and Farmers Market Nutrition Program matching. One of those is a locally funded program, Access to Healthy Food. It's funded by our county. And so that portion funds matches up to $35 per market. And then we also are part of the National Double Up Food Bucks program, which matches $25. So combined, if they're eligible for both, they can get up to $60 at each market. We also have a produce prescription program where physicians and nurse practitioners are writing individuals that are that either have disease or are at risk of a food-related disease, or a disease where it could improve by improving their diets, are being written prescriptions for fresh fruits and vegetables that they then redeem at the farmers market. So we're more or less filling prescriptions for fresh produce at the market. We also have a kids club called the Good Food Detectives Club, where kids get an activity booklet that it's all about sustainability, agriculture, where food comes from, healthy eating, and they're rewarded with $2 in what we call munch money that they then get a shop with. Like it's real money they get a shop with for produce at the market. We also offer free kids activities every Saturday. That takes place in that schoolhouse. And then we often have cooking demonstrations as well. So this was a really fun slide to put together, and it just really hit home all of the work and growth that we've seen over the years. So since 2012, our customer attendance has increased by 196%. Last year, we had 171,000 people visit on Saturday, and then like another 25,000 that visited at the Wednesday market. Our vendor sales increased by 231%. Last year, we sold over $3.7 million through the market. Our food incentives and SNAP dollars have increased 663% since 2012. Last year, between the incentive programs and the actual SNAP dollars, we dispensed $171,000. Now, we have added a number of programs since 2012, so that contributes a lot to that growth. And then our total token sales, which includes all of those food incentives and SNAP dollars, but also cash value tokens, have increased 882% since 2012, going from 47,000 to 470,000. So how did we get there? So these are kind of a little more geared towards market managers, but one of the most important things I think is budgeting, really setting goals and being realistic on how much money you can bring in and what kind of grants you have. So starting small, but we have, nearly, I think, what is that, quadrupled our budget. Last year it was around $250,000. And I realized after I put this together that doesn't actually include any of our tokens or our food incentive programs, which are another $111,000 in food incentives. We've had a number of grants over the years that have really helped contribute to our success. USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program grants. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 of those. We have one that's closing up right now. Specialty crop block grants. We have 2 right now, and we've had at least 1 or 2 every year since I've been working for the market. As I mentioned earlier, we get a lot of funding through our county for our incentive programs. Most of that, or all of that, comes from the Children's Services Fund, which was a local tax that was approved, and they have all kinds of different programs that help children in our community. The Double Up Food Bucks, it's a national SNAP matching program, and then we often have grants through the Missouri Department of Agriculture. Another way that we bring money in that allows us to kind of offset our vendor fees is through community events. We've been holding a farm to table dinner since 2014, and last year we raised over $15,000. That is 100%, we're able to do that because of community support. We had $0 in expenses last year. Everything was donated. All the food is donated by our vendors. The space, caveat, my husband owns the restaurant, so a little lucky with that, but they donate their restaurant and he volunteers his time to help cook the food. But we've also brought in other restaurants and other chefs that we know support local food to help us grow that. All of the drinks are donated by local breweries and wineries. And then we have market staff and vendors that work the event. We have a lot of community partners. Excuse me. CCUA, who I mentioned earlier, is probably the biggest partner. Their success and their partnership with us is really why we were able to build the Ag Park. It really required every single person to be in place, all the right people to make that happen. Columbia Parks and Recreation is also a really big supporter of our organization. Not only have they rented the space to us since they acquired that property in the 90s, but they've been very active and supportive of the capital campaign and the build out and the activities that we do on their property at the ag park. We also work really closely with city council. We regularly go to council meetings and talk to them, tell them what we're doing anytime. Anything that's going through or that needs their approval for the ag park, we're always there talking about our successes. I also work really closely with the health department. When we first started, or when I first started, we had a pretty poor working relationship with the health department. And over the years, I've established a much better one, and they now trust us and know that our vendors are selling food in a safe manner, and that we're making sure that they're following all the local and state and federal health department regulations. As I mentioned earlier, we have a bunch of universities or colleges in town, so we work close with them often and do tabling events at activities that they have. We also have a lot of groups that come and table at our organization. So having 5,000-6,000 people come through, we know that we're a space that people want to come to and get the word out about what they're doing. So we've kind of changed it over the years, but we used to have it to where for them to come, it was free, and as long as they provided a free kids activity, they could come to our market. We're kind of venturing into new territory this year. We've started a sponsorship program. A lot of our large grants are ending, and we're trying to kind of come up with a more sustainable long-term income stream. So we are hoping to partner with a bunch of different businesses in town and offer them sponsorship opportunities. We also feel like it's really important to offer programming and events at the market. The longer that you can get people to stay, the more that they are going to, the more they're going to spend with the vendors. And we want to show them the value that we have in the community. So we have live music every Saturday. As I mentioned, we have the kids activities, the incentive programs, the cooking demos. We do sampling every Saturday. So our staff, we always have like a featured vendor, and the staff samples their products. We often do free giveaways. So we have a lot of surveys that we're running all the time, and enter or complete the survey and be entered to win a free t-shirt. But then we also do just fun surveys throughout the market or throughout the season. And then we have events often. So during National Farmers Market Week, we do a watermelon eating contest. And then we started a few years ago doing a Halloween contest. So we're always trying to kind of offer that little extra to keep people there longer. I'm a true believer that it really takes staff to put on a successful market. We are very fortunate to have the staff that we have now. When I first started, I was hired as a part-time market manager, and we had one part-time market assistant and a part-time AmeriCorps Vista. The Vistas that we had them for 3 years, and they really helped us kind of get a solid footing and be able to kind of take the next step into hiring staff on a regular basis. So we had Vistas in 11, 12, 13, and 14. And then we've often had service learners through the University of Missouri. But in 2018, that was kind of the transition, or when we started our ambassador program. So at that point, I was full-time then, and we had 3 market assistants and 2 market ambassadors. And then in 2021, we were able to promote our assistant manager to full-time. So we now have 2 full-time employees, 4 market assistants, 6 market ambassadors. So all 12 of us are there during the summer on Saturdays. We track every single data point that you can imagine. I'm sure my staff rolls their eyes every time that I tell them to start tracking another number. But I feel it's really important to be able to show the community the value that we offer. So all of those numbers, you know, that I showed on the last 10 years, it's because we track data. And so we track all of our tokens that are dispensed and redeemed. We track the weather. We do customer counts. How many vendors are there? What types of vendors? How many kids participated in activities? Are there other events that are happening in Columbia that could potentially affect our attendance? So we have all of this as kind of a historical record that we can always go back and reference. Some tools that I feel are really important. I just said all of that about the data. We also use that to generate an annual report. And then a lot of the information we get from vendor and customer surveys, we're also able to kind of wrap into that whole story that we tell. I'm a stickler for branding and messaging and being consistent. Your messaging is also part of your branding. The way that you speak to your customers is part of your brand. So it's not just the visuals, the logos, or the colors. So we feel that that's really important. We also kind of defined a brand advocate. So basically what we see is that if you're trying to talk to everybody on social media, you're talking to no one. You really need to be speaking to the people that are following you and that are your supporters, and those are the ones that are going to spread the word and actually like listen and participate with you online. Budgeting, grants, and fundraising, those are also really important tools for us. And finding your team. So, you know, as I mentioned, I really feel it's important to have a staff, but a lot of markets aren't able to do that in their earlier years. And so being able to at least find a good team of volunteers is really important. I also feel that it's really important to be a resource for our vendors. I tell my staff when I'm training them that we are not, while we all have this kind of more public facing, interacting with customers role, we're actually there to work for our vendors. Our job is to ensure that our vendors' sales increase. And we're not just there to socialize and have a good time. I mean, I want everybody to have a good time while they're working, but I also, my number one priority is to make sure our vendors are doing well at the market. Their success is our success. We occasionally have write grants for the vendors. So right now we have a big FMPP grant that is building websites and marketing tools for our vendors. So I'm always trying to come up with ways that I can help them grow their businesses. So kind of what's beyond this year? What's next for CFM? Last year, we revised our bylaws and our mission and vision statements. As I mentioned, we are applying to become a 501c3. One of the reasons we changed those is because they no longer are really representing who we are and what we offer. That was the mission statement before was kind of a really simple, like, we're a marketplace. And now it's much more talking about the resources and the food incentive programs and the education that we offer. But part of that also was because we're beginning this sponsorship program. So 501c3 nonprofits, donations to those organizations are tax deductible. Also, next step is to finish the construction at the Ag Park. So the wings, as I said, they're started today. So the next couple months will be a little tricky. We're gonna still be operating on site. So we're gonna kind of have to be moving around the park. But hopefully they'll be finished by the end of the May, early June. So we're really excited for that to be finished. And then stepping into the fundraising phase for the Welcome Center. And kind of like once we get into that building with the Welcome Center, I really think that we're going to be able to continue to grow those opportunities we offer for our vendors with education and teaching. So this next slide is, it's about a 7-minute video that kind of really shows everything about the market. So I hope it kind of gives you a good visual. Then after that, we can jump into questions. So hopefully the sound works. So let me know if it doesn't come through.
Did you say there's supposed to be sound?
Here at the farmer's market.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear the sound?
I think it came in, yeah.
If we can get more people to the market,
Good.
buying this food, then. Oops. Ugh. There's one thing we're rich in here at the farmer's market, and that's food. And if we can get more people to the market buying this food, then not only are we improving the health and livelihood of our community, but we're also improving the livelihood and health of our farmers and our producers. I started managing the Columbia Farmers Market in 2013. And back then, we had a much different setup than what we have now.
I mean, the market was, you know, in a gravel parking lot.
We used to stand out in the rain in our tents all the time.
The big change is having this beautiful building that can be used for so many different things and is really going to serve the community for probably the next 100 years.
It's so vibrant. So many people I've never seen before are coming out every week. I meet with people every week, and we're selling so much more bread with this new.
You can't get rid of 2 truckloads of sweet corn anywhere else in an hour or 2.
This is the best place to come, and because the public who comes here, the customers, they come with this mindset that they are looking for something natural.
You know, people come to the market not only to buy the food that they're going to eat, but they come for the experience and to talk to the farmer that's growing the food that they're eating.
I feel so lucky to be in a position where I talk to every single person who buys my product.
I mean, we talk about their lives, we talk about my life, we talk about vegetables and how they eat vegetables and what they're liking and what's coming up.
Spaces where we can interact with our neighbors and our community are becoming rarer and rarer. And we have created a space where it's just growing and growing. It's becoming a larger and larger community every Saturday.
Once you do visit, you begin to really capture what's going on here, the possibilities. And it gets kind of contagious and you begin to want to come back and see what's happening.
We're so fortunate. I mean, there's so few markets to operate year round in the country.
I'm still amazed by what we have. When I get a Saturday off, I always visit farmers markets, and most markets across the country are still your pop-up tents. And we've become this model for markets to replicate across the country.
Right now, we've got like 5,000 people coming every Saturday. It's hard to imagine more people than that attending, but we all want it.
A lot of new vendors have come in, which is great, you know, have new faces and new people and new products. and they support each other like that.
If somebody has a car problem and happens to get there late, 4 or 5 people will go help set up their tents and get their tables set up and get it squared away.
The vendors can come and buy things before the bell rings. And so we have several that come every single week and we know what they want and we just have it in our hands, ready to give it to them before the bell rings so that they can get back to their stall.
I'm buying their product and it's going in my food and a lot of times we're trading, like they're hungry, I'm feeding them breakfast and they're, sending me product and such.
And our vendors that have been selling here for years are a very welcoming bunch. They want everybody to be successful. So, I'm always seeing new vendors, talking to more veteran vendors and giving tips.
I think the market does a really great job of promoting itself and also promoting the individual vendors and components to make the market a really special place. We want to be that resource for the vendors to help them however we can. That's been one of the really amazing things to see over the last couple of years is to see vendors start very small at the market and then be able to grow into a brick and mortar. And the market is the reason that they were able to take their business on that journey and be successful.
Economically, it creates a lot of jobs and it's going to create more and more jobs. So there's big economic development, not only real close to Columbia, but within 50 miles from here.
15 cents on the dollar goes back to the farmer when you buy at a grocery store versus that entire dollar going back to the farmer when you buy direct. And there's really not many opportunities to buy directly from a farmer unless you're going straight to their farm.
It's much more than just buying things. It's about the community and the community that we live in and the community of people that we depend on. And if somebody needs help, they can call me and I'm going to come help them and turn around. And if I need help, I'm going to call and I'm going to ask for help, which is community. And shopping at the farmer's market is part of that community.
The vendors are my friends now, and they'll call me on Friday night and say, Shelley, we have more mushrooms than we can sell tomorrow. Will you buy 40 pounds of them? And I can say yes. And that makes me so happy. When folks buy my pasta products, I turn right around and spend that money at local farms on beef and pork and eggs.
So customers that are coming to the market and that are supporting us farmers are helping support Columbia.
And then that dollar gets passed around time and time again. So it's just a good economic model.
Here's the beauty of it all. If you really want to feel a sense of community, be here at the farmer's market, be, part of the vendors, part of the customers. It really, fills you up.
And when they find out what kind of customer base our market has and what kind of following they can have, and that they can be successful and make a good living, not just a living, but a good living, it's very attractive to a lot of them.
I've come so far in the last few years, being able to work with local farms.
For what my idea was, what I wanted to do, which kind of people I wanted to connect with, this is the right place for me. I'm doing something which is going to the people. My experiences that I wanted to share is going through, my heart and my voice together.
That's kind of what a farmer's market does. It really impacts the whole community, not just with the good food, but with the relationships. And so that's what I've really appreciated all these years. It's kind of beautiful, really. Yeah.
All right. Any questions?
Well, that is really beautiful. So yeah, I have a question to start off with. What's making you switch from 501c4 to 501c3?
I mean, the biggest reason is because donations are tax deductible for C3 organizations. And so, I mean, we're tax exempt and we get some, we're eligible for some grants, but there's a lot more funding available for C3s than there are C4s. So we're just trying to find we're hoping to, be able to access every possible funding source that we can.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I just wondered if there was something more to it.
When the market was first, when it first got its nonprofit status, I believe that was back in the 90s when we weren't doing what we do now. I mean, it really was just a marketplace, and now we offer so much more, like education and food incentive programs and the ag park. And so we've really changed since we got that status.
Yeah, you really are a 501c3 with a charitable purpose. Yeah.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Are there other farmers markets in Columbia, Missouri, or are you the only one?
There are two other ones.
Okay.
One of them actually is a group that split off from us in the early 2000s. And that was kind of when we were really starting to move forward with, it took us 20 years, but that discussion is like, this is something our organization really wants to do. And those group of people did not want a pavilion. They just wanted to come and pop up and be done. So so they split off. Then there's another one that's more of kind of an artisan's market, but they do have farmers there, and they allow reselling. So it's a kind of a different vibe, and it's on Sundays, so it doesn't really conflict with us at all.
Okay. Yeah. What you said about the people that just want to pop up their canopies, I can think of some people that would fit that profile. Okay, I have at least two other questions. I think you kind of touched on this, but I'm curious if you do any like surveying of your vendors about sort of what they're making, grossing at the market, or maybe as their farm businesses. I'm just kind of curious. There was a program that ran in for our market where we have some data and we kind of have an idea of what our vendors are making at our market gross, but I'd be curious for comparison's sake if you have the data.
Yeah, so we do a survey at the end of every year. It's anonymous. I get usually about a 30 to 40% response rate that asks for their sales. So I mean, we say, like last year, extrapolating that, we're estimating that our vendors sold like $3.7 million last year. I think the average was in the upper 50,000. So I think probably between 55 and 60, somewhere in there. It's kind of what they were averaging annually, if I remember correctly. We do, so those websites that I talked about that we're offering for vendors, the ones that are getting that have been required to report their sales. So we have had some of that data as well.
Sorry, I'm solo parenting right now. My wife has conferences tonight, so we're doing the best we can. This is Addie.
Hi, Addie.
I have one more question that I know for sure. And I guess it relates to the market hiring employees, your position, and how the market. Yeah, we'll get Baby Shark Spaceship in just a minute. So that's been the thing lately. So my question is, how did your market go about funding the position and kind of making that transition from it being part-time to full-time and just kind of filling all of the things that you need to fill, having a good salary and benefits and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
How did the market do that? How's the position funded? And yeah.
So I think it was 2015, I think, is when I kind of went on salary, or at least was full-time when I quit my other job. And no, I don't think I was salary. I think I was just kind of full-time. I was still hourly at that point. But I mean, so when I was hired, there was, I think, an $8,000 budget to pay for my work as a part-time employee for that first year. And I don't know what the market manager was doing before me, but there was no way that I could have done my job in a part-time capacity. So, I mean, it kind of just quickly like grew. It's like, okay, this is how many hours I'm working. And we had grants active at that point when I came in, so that kind of supported that. Our vendor fees also support, you know, our revenue or our expenses as well. I would say that my position has been mainly funded, has been the biggest job that's been funded by vendor fees. And then all of the additional ones have been kind of added with grants. This year is the first year that our members are probably paying the majority percentage of our staffing costs because so many of those grants have ended. So we did raise vendor fees this year, and that's another reason for trying to get this sponsorship program and the 501c3 and all of that to try and come up with different revenues. You know, grants are great, but like it tends to be like most grants, you have to like come up with a program. And then what do you do after the 2 years after that program's done? Like, if you want to continue it, then you've got to come up with money and the staff to continue that. So that's why we're really hoping we can veer away from grants. I mean, we'll see how the sponsorship program works though. And then as far like benefits, we just started offering myself and our assistant manager benefits in December. So that was something I've been pushing for years, and we finally were like, okay, let's do it.
Cool. One follow-up question. What are the vendor fees for vendors?
They're $700 per stall for the summer season. And then $450 for the winter season, and then $200, I think, for the Wednesday. And those are all per stall. There's different way, you know, additional stalls or daily fees or any of that, but I mean that's kind of about the what the majority of people are paying.
What are some of the other vendor resources that you provide? You mentioned the website assistance and marketing assistance.
So not a lot at this point. That's something that we really, I mean, that grant that we've had has been a 3-year grant. So that's kind of that's been our biggest focus. But like the other thing, I guess we do a lot of promotion for the vendors. I think it's a little more than most markets do, or a lot more. Like like that video you saw, we're also doing individual vendor videos. So we're creating these high quality videos for our vendors to use as promotional efforts. Through the website project, we hired a professional photographer to go out to their farm. So now they have 200-300 professional photos that they can use for their social media and marketing efforts. Also through that grant, we bought them a year subscription to Canva. If you're familiar with that. Released a booklet that has vendor profiles in there with recipes that we distribute at the market. So it's really just kind of those like additional marketing efforts for our vendors and just kind of always being there as a resource. For example, I had a vendor the other day that like he wanted to do pre-ordering for fruit and veg or for veggie starts. And he was like, I don't know how to do this. And I was like, well, let's jump online and create a Google form together. so just kind of like being there to help them however we can. But the hope is like when that welcome center is finished and we have offices there, that we can kind of continue to offer more business resources and training. So beyond just marketing, but farmers are great at farming, not so great at running a business. No offense to anyone that's farmers.
None of us are good at everything, so, yeah. Yeah, that's all really wonderful. I love the idea of having offices on site.
Yeah, this is my office here in my house.
Of course. Yes. So you talked in the video about the economic development potential. Is there more in the works on that? Do you quantify that in more ways than how does the money circulate in the community, and are other things happening because you support so many farmers?
Yeah, no, we haven't really done anything beyond just kind of that, having that base number. There's what is it called? There's like this calculator online that like you can basically like how many times that dollar grows. What is that called? It's like something food calculator. But and I don't remember what the number is, but it is really cool to kind of pop stuff in there and be like, oh wow, like that's really the impact we're having. I guess the one thing that we probably do talk about regularly is that so many of our farmers, are coming from small rural communities, not here in Columbia, and that money's now being reinvested into those smaller communities, which are struggling more than somewhere like Columbia is. So not by, it's like where this urban meets rural, it's a really unique space. And then those vendors are, shopping, like when they come to Columbia, they're, going to the grocery store or Walmart or getting lunch. And so that there is always money being spent in Columbia when they're here. And then their income's also going out to the rural areas.
Nice.
What are some of the changes that you've seen at the market in terms of what vendors are offering or what customers are asking for?
When I started, we had a lot more larger produce vendors, like quantity, and a lot of them were kind of like doing it all, and they had these massive setups. And we only have 2 or 3 of those now. We see a lot more of your small beginning farmers, which I always fear, like I know that we're having this kind of like changing of generations at the market, and that's, the age of the farmer is very, what is it, 59 now, I think. I mean, I still have farmers that are like 80 years old and still selling at the market. But there is this generational shift. And so those smaller farmers are producing on a smaller level, but that's because they're like in, years 1 to 5 versus those larger vendors that are now retired had been doing it for 10, 15 years. So my hope is, that those will eventually grow. I would say that vendors are a lot more specialized, are honed in on like 1 or 2 things versus trying to do it all. I mean, we still have a few that, that sell every vegetable you can think of, but there's other ones that are like they just grow mushrooms or microgreens or specialize in lettuce or sweet potatoes or garlic. So I would say that's probably, as far as produce, that's been the biggest thing. We are desperately lacking in fruit. Most of our fruit producers were some of those more senior vendors that have either drastically scaled back or have retired. You know, it takes a long time to establish fruit trees. So that's something we're really hoping we can get. And then people are always wanting more prepared foods at the market. We do cap the percentage of non-farmers that can sell at the market to 20%. So 80% have to be either farmers or farmer processors. So we define a farmer processor as someone that is growing something and then turning that into a value-added product. And that kind of also, that more like zoned in kind of specialty niche is another kind of venue I've seen a number of my vendors do. Like I have a vendor that used to be one of those big produce vendors, and now he sells fermented sauerkraut with cabbage that he grows. We have a vendor that has this beautiful large lavender farm, and then they sell all kinds of like body products and value-added lavender things. So those kind of vendors fall under the 80%, but you know, somebody that's selling coffee, that's roasting those coffee beans, and they fall under that 20%, or bread, or we have some food trucks and stuff like that too, that usually fall under that 20%.
I have another question. For new vendors, or do you have like I guess like a wait list for new vendors? Are you capped out on the number of vendors your market can support? And if you do have a wait list, what's the process look like?
We have a wait list for non-farmers. We've basically been at that 20% cap for years now. And we usually can get one, maybe two in every year, just kind of with turnover. And it is percentage based. So if we get more farmers, then we can let more non-farmers in. I think this year will be the first year that we will be maxed out of space at the new site. The interesting thing is that our membership hasn't really increased. We've been between 75 to 85 members over the last 10 years. We have 79 right now. But so many of our vendors have decided to buy second stalls that we've actually are pretty much maxed out now. So that's another reason we raised fees this year. We substantially raised the second stall fee to make all the stalls the same fee. That used to be a little bit less. We just put a cap on beef and chicken. We have a lot of protein vendors. And then the process for them to kind of the waiting list, basically, there's a $30 application fee. So they have to apply, pay the fee. The board reviews the application. If they feel that it's a vendor and a product that would at some point be a good addition to the market, then we'll put them on the wait list. Like if it's somebody that just wants to sell like more cookies and cakes, then we'll probably decline the application.
Rita, what do you do if you want a Saturday off?
In that video, when I said, when I get a Saturday off, I always visit farmers markets. My staff watched that and they just like started laughing at me. Like, when you get a Saturday off, what do you mean? Like Christmas and New Year's? I usually take 1 or 2 Saturdays off a year. And I try to plan that in the winter months, or at least one of those. But I have a few people that have worked for me over the years that will still fill in. So basically, I'll do my best to way overstaff the market.
Sure.
How did the farmers market sort of, I guess, talk about this big idea or settle on this idea of what you wanted to go for? And along this process, were there any major setbacks or disappointments? And then how did you overcome those?
You mean with the ag park development?
Yeah.
So CCUA was a vendor at our market back in 2013. And so then I think they were just a few years old, and they long-term goal was to never have to sell their produce. Long-term goal was to be able to develop or to donate it all. But in those initial years, they didn't have enough revenue coming in through donations and grants to sustain that. So at that point, they were selling at the market. I had just started and I really wanted to start educational programming for kids. And so, you know, that was kind of in their wheelhouse. And so we hired them to develop a lot of our educational resources that we have. And so that's kind of like where we started working together. And then their site, their original site, in 2014 or 15, I think, they were on a year-to-year lease with this farm, which is not sustainable if you're trying to build a farm. So they needed a permanent space and we needed a pavilion. We had attempted and failed multiple times in the 2000s, or the early 2000s, and I guess the 90s probably too, to build a pavilion. Right before the recession, we got really close. Like we had architectural designs, we had a campaign director, and the recession hit, the whole thing failed. And that was probably the final out of 3 failures. So we were really starting to realize that we as a farmer's market were not capable of running a multi-million-dollar capital campaign. So they needed this long-term site. We needed a pavilion. We were already kind of working together. Parks was trying to like figure out what to do with this property that they've basically been holding for us to get our act together to be able to build the pavilion. I mean, it was just like an open field they weren't using for anything. And we have a really, really strong parks program here. So for them to just have like nothing happening in one of their parks isn't normal for them. And so that's kind of how it all started. We're like, this is what you need, this is what we need. And so we just had like really all the right leaders. We had really great leadership in Parks and Rec, and we sat down and started talking about it. We developed what we called Friends of the Farm, which is kind of the group of all these nonprofits and them in parks, and slowly started developing it. We hired, I don't remember what his actual title is called, but he's basically like he specializes in fundraising money. So he taught us a lot of the tools on kind of how to begin this campaign. One of the founders of CCUA, we ended up appointing him as the campaign manager. So he's been the kind of the face of this project the whole time. He's a really personal, outgoing guy that has a lot of connections in town. So that was a huge, pro for us in making this happen. And then it just kind of kept building, and we're like, okay, we've raised enough money now. So long ago, I'm trying to remember all the steps. We secured $500,000 from MU Healthcare, which is the hospital here. That's why the pavilion's called the MU Healthcare Pavilion. They're more than welcome to put their name on that building. And so we were kind of in the silent phase, and we secured that donation from them. And then that allowed us to kind of have a public launch. And, having that money there, I think, is why people start donating. Like, okay, this is real. They're not going to screw it up this time. They have the right people, and here we are now, $7.5 million later.
I think that partnership between the farmers market and CCUA sounds very familiar, especially with CCUA. We have this nonprofit in town, the Living Earth Center, that also operates a local community farm that's all based on donating their produce to local hunger assistance efforts. And the property that they're on was also just sold. It was part of the School Sisters of Notre Dame, which was a convent, and that property was just sold. And so they're also sort of looking and trying to figure out what this next phase of their organization is going to be like. So I think there are possibly some cool sort of analogies and connections to be made in our own community.
Yeah.
And
I
our
don't know if I
hospital was
really,
interested in supporting a farmer's market pre-COVID. We need to go back to them, so.
I don't know if I really hit on this, but so the city owns the park. It is still a city park. Even though the partners have really been the ones that have raised the money. And so the city and the county really have contributed very, very little to this. And so that's, I think, also been a very big pro for them. Like, they get to say that there's really cool things that are happening in their park. For us, we have a 35-year lease with the city. We do pay rent for the pavilion, but when we're not using it, they can also now rent it out to other groups. And when we open in, the summer of 19, so 6 months later, you jump into 2020, having a huge outdoor space. It became very popular. There were like all kinds of like proms and spring concerts and stuff that were held at there. CCUA has a different agreement. They actually don't pay anything. They're required to maintain the site is kind of what their lease is. But yeah, they don't want to run a farmer's market and we don't want to manage the pavilion, so it worked out great. Any other questions?
I'm not hearing any. Is there any parting words or any last thoughts you have for us?
I think, I think we're connecting with different organizations in the community is so important. Like, not trying to do it all yourself. That's why we failed multiple times. And I have some vendors that still can't wrap their heads around that. Like why is this group part of like, well, we wouldn't have this beautiful roof if we didn't make these relationships. And we as an organization haven't really changed at all. But I think to some of the vendors, they may just, I don't know, they're grumpy. But like, I just value those relationships that we've developed so much over the years. I guess too, like if you're wanting to just kind of see more about the park, buildthistown.org is the website for the capital campaign. And so we've got, there should be a lot of like videos and resources and stuff on there about how everything's really structured, who's involved and who's responsible for what. So that's a good resource too.
I just thought of one more question, if you have enough time for one more question.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the split when you had the people that kind of wanted to just keep doing things the way they were doing, and how that worked as what the organization was before and what it was kind of after the split?
So this was way before my time, so it's all just like finding documents or hearsay. But yeah, as I said, there was, I think it was close to 50% of our vendors that left. We, Columbia Farmers Market, we stayed at the site and we kept the name. I think they probably took a big core, probably some of our core vendors. But over time, a lot of those vendors eventually came back. It still exists in the mall parking lot, and it struggles, and I think it's it's probably struggled even more so since we opened the pavilion. Pre-pavilion, our customer counts were 2,500. We'd be like we'd hit 3,000 a handful of times during the summer. And now we're, 5,000 to 6,000 every Saturday. So I imagine we've taken even more of those vendors or our customers. There's an individual or a business that I think his father kind of led the split. But the son is probably, I think, at a point that's probably getting soon to retiring by now. And from what I've heard, I think after he leaves, that market will probably dissolve. We would welcome anybody to come and sell at the market as long as they, follow all of our rules and regulations. So any of them are welcome to come back. But it is like there is some bad blood. Like it is not there's a podcast out there somewhere about the split. I just randomly came across it once, or like some radio thing. You could probably find it and listen to it, and it is entertaining. So I don't interview anybody, they just talk about it. So I don't even know who these guys are. But yeah, there's definitely some bad blood with that, but most people don't know about it anymore. It happened so long ago.
I see a lot of parallels with what you presented, where your market was at in 2013 and where essentially our market has been since 2015. I think like we haven't really grown that much in terms of vendors or sales, customers, any of that. It seems pretty about the same, a little more after COVID, but not significant in the way yours has. And I just see so many parallels. And then with what Sabri said, with the nonprofit growing food for donation, it's just, I can see there being a group in our current market that would want to just leave things as is. And there's another group that can see how beneficial having a setup like what you have done is in terms of engaging with the community and strengthening community. So yeah, it's really good.
It is interesting. Like I said, I still have vendors that complain about a lot of stuff, and I would say the vendors that are the unhappiest, which I don't understand why, are probably the ones that like wouldn't have wanted any of this to happen, but they are also the ones that complained the most before it that there weren't enough customers, or that their sales weren't good enough. And so, I've always been a true believer of like, the more that we can offer the community through this event, the better everybody's going to do. If we're just this thing that just pops up and we're not investing in the people that are spending the money at the market, they're not going to invest in us. That's my final word.
Well, thank you for sharing your story with us. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So, that's-
You got, and